Good evening, and welcome to the Miracle of Prosperity. I'm Reverend Jim Webb, your host for this evening, the author of The Soul of Prosperity, Create Your Self-Manifesting Vision Board, Prosperity from A to Z, as well as several other titles. I also serve as the senior minister of the Tacoma Metaphysical Chapel in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'm so glad to be here tonight. I'm here with a special program for you tonight. The title of it is Forgive Your Way to Prosperity. For as you know, we look at prosperity in a number of different ways. Not necessarily just money and stuff, but so much more. We look at professional prosperity, where, in the words of Florence Scovel Shinn, we have a wonderful job with wonderful pay, where we provide a wonderful service in a wonderful way. We look at relationship prosperity, where we have harmony in our relationships that is an outer reflection of our inner harmony. We look at family prosperity, where our family situations are situations of nurture and support. We also, of course, look at financial and logistical prosperity, where our lives just work well and where we have money and enough comfort so that our lives are not challenging for us. And we look at all the ways to either create prosperity and allow it, or ways to remove the barriers to the prosperity that is available to us in infinite supply. Well, one of the things we're going to work with tonight is forgiveness. For the lack of forgiveness is a barrier that stands between us and all the prosperity we desire and deserve. So we're going to do a special program called Forgive Your Way to Prosperity. So what is this based on? Well, the title of the show is The Miracle of Prosperity. So one of the things we do is we integrate the lessons of A Course in Miracles in very practical ways so that we can experience more prosperity. And there are several lessons that we'd like to integrate tonight. Lessons 121 and 122. Forgiveness is the key to happiness, and forgiveness offers everything I want. In essence, these two lessons tell us in order to have prosperity, you have to forgive your way to it. And then the lesson that we're really going to work with tonight is lesson 134, which is let me perceive forgiveness as it really is. And so in order to forgive our way to prosperity, we have to use forgiveness as opposed to misusing forgiveness. So we have to reframe forgiveness because quite often we've misused forgiveness. So let's reframe forgiveness for a moment so that we can forgive our way to prosperity. The way we've misused forgiveness is we've believed that forgiveness was a verb. We've believed that forgiveness was something we confer upon another, and we've believed that prosperity was something we had the power to give. And that's a misuse of prosperity. Why? Because when we believe that prosperity is a verb and something that we deign to give to someone, we are continuing a consciousness of separation, and we are actually adding fuel to the fire of the misunderstanding that created the need to forgive in the first place. What do I mean by that? Well, perhaps you have someone and you'd like to get to forgiveness with them. The first thing that we do when we misuse forgiveness is we say, I forgive you for this, I forgive you for that, I forgive you for this, I forgive you for that, I forgive you for this. And by the time we get done taking an inventory of all of the grievances we have against them, we're madder than we were in the beginning. We haven't forgiven a thing. We've just scrape the scab off of old wounds and they're bleeding again. That's a misuse of forgiveness. What that does is it perpetuates the grievance that caused the need for the forgiveness in the first place. We haven't healed what was hurt. So a different way of looking at forgiveness is healing what was hurt within us. So reframing forgiveness in that way keeps us from this back and forth tit for tat. Because the other thing that happens when we forgive is that when we misuse forgiveness, the other thing that happens is we continue that wall of separation between us and the other person. We put ourselves on a high horse and we look down upon them and say, I'm morally superior than you and separate from you, but I will deign to forgive you because I'm the better person. And what that does is it doesn't do anything actually. It actually perpetuates the idea that I am separate from my brother is separate from me, that there is something wrong with me, and I am aggrieved, and I hold my brother responsible for my unhappiness. How does that move us forward? It may give us a sense of self-righteous indignation. It may give us a sense of haughty spiritual superiority, but it doesn't heal our hearts. In other words, our task is to perceive forgiveness as it really is. Maybe it's not a verb that we do. I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Maybe forgiveness is a state that we attain. Maybe forgiveness is an inner state of peace and love, joy and harmony. And maybe that forgiveness begins with ourselves. In A Course in Miracles, Lesson 134, let me perceive forgiveness as it really is. It implies very strongly that forgiveness is simply another way of being in a state of oneness with the one source that is the source for love, the one force that is the force of love. And being in that state of oneness, we feel loved unconditionally. We are unconditional love. We feel the flow of that loving grace. And the flow of that loving grace heals our wounds. And it causes us to no longer look outside of ourselves for someone or something to change in order to make us feel better about ourselves. And so we let the other person off the hook who was our tormentor, our oppressor, our withholder, the person that hurt us. Because that place within us that was hurt is healed by grace. So forgiveness is an inner state of being. And we get to that inner state simply by sitting with God, listening to the truth of God, remembering we are one with God, feeling the love of God, knowing we are lovable, being in the energy of unlimited deservingness, and releasing the pain of the past by using the balm of the ever-present God to heal that which was wounded within us. So forgiveness is an inner state that we attain and not a verb that we do. And understanding forgiveness in this way allows us to be in the energy of prosperity. So you might say, that's all nice and that's all well, that's all good, but how do we apply this practically? So let's do one. So, you had a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a person friend who hurt you. They might have cheated on you. They might have stole your credit card and ran up your American Express bill. They might have lied to you and went with you for 3 months and forgot to tell you they were married to somebody else. Any of these sound familiar? Well, we're all human, right? Or it might have been a little microaggression. No matter what, you have a grievance. You hold a grievance against this person, right? Your heart is hurt. But in truth, there is a script going on within you. And that is where the healing needs to be. An apology from someone else isn't going to heal the hurt within you. It's only going to separate you from them by perpetuating the whole illusion. So what is the illusion that must be healed? The illusion that must be healed is the idea that there is something wrong with you, that there is something unlovable with you, and that's why they left you. That's why they stole your American Express card and put $2,378 worth of merchandise on it. That's why they didn't respect you enough to tell you they were married to somebody else until 3 months into the affair, when their ring fell out of their pocket, which means they didn't tell you in the first place. So there is a wound within you, a place where you unconsciously believed you didn't deserve better, a place where you unconsciously believed that you weren't worth better, a place where you unconsciously believed that you were unlovable. That's where your wound is, and that's what must be healed. So getting into a state of forgiveness is getting into a state where you allow and invite and invoke the grace of God into that place that is hurt. And the grace of God heals that place that was hurt. You sit and you listen to God telling you how lovable, how beautiful, how wonderful you are. And you believe God instead of believing what your experiences have lied to you about. And you move into this place of union, this place of oneness, this place of peace, this place of grace. And when you move into this place, you move into the place of yes that says yes to the yes God offers. You switch that I am unlovable station frequency to the I am lovable frequency. And when you switch that I am unlovable frequency to the I am lovable frequency, what does your world do? Your world sends you someone to love you instead of someone who told you who you were not lovable. Because your world is simply an outside reflection of your inner energetic frequency. And that is how moving into an inner state of forgiveness offers you that which you desire and you deserve, and brings you to the happiness that you will for yourself and that God wills for you. So to summarize this, forgive your way to prosperity, because forgiveness offers everything you've ever wanted and is the key to your happiness. But you have to reframe forgiveness from being an outside thing to being an inside thing. And we're going to work with this a little later, because we're going to use one of the tools for forgiveness, ho'oponopono, and we're going to reframe that a little bit too. So ho'oponopono becomes an inside job. And I had a guest lined up for tonight, one of your favorites, Ed Miller. In my mind, as I sketched out this program, I imagined me and Ed doing this program and having a ball with it. There was only one little hitch with that. And this is actually a good hitch. Ed decided to be prosperous. Ed decided to go down to Costa Rica and look for a second villa down in Costa Rica on this Sunday night. So here I am. But we're going to come back after this. We're going to take a break. And what we're going to do is we're going to work with your questions about your prosperity journey. And we're going to look at how we can use the power of forgiveness to allow you to experience the prosperity that you desire and we're going to go and we're going to look at ways to reframe prosperity, to reframe forgiveness, and to reframe ho'oponopono so that we can forgive our way to prosperity. And our producer, Michael, who is sporting a new military haircut, is going to be with us to help us. Michael, come on camera for a moment.
See, you're making me work. I'm down here. I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale for the INTA convention. And of course, you needed me to produce this program.
Yes.
But we were going to do this at a real nice studio, Ed Miller.
Yes.
But Ed happened to go to Costa Rica with his beautiful wife. So
so here we are.
Here we are.
Is in Costa Rica looking for his second villa with his beautiful wife.
That's right.
Let us take a lesson from that. He is a prosperity beacon for us all.
Yes.
Yes. So we're going to go to break now. And when we come back, we're going to discuss forgiving your way to prosperity. I know you all may have some questions about your own prosperity journey, and we're going to address those questions in the context of forgiving your way to prosperity. And we're going to look at a new way to use ho'oponopono to forgive your way to prosperity here on the New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
And we're back here on the New Thought Media Network. And what I want us all to do is have a conversation about how we can apply forgiveness as a part of our prosperity journey. And there may be some questions, so let's take some questions.
Well, we want to welcome Shay this evening, and she says, I started doing a bunch of forgiveness work and healing occurred. Well, that's what happens. The icky feelings keep coming back, though. I want to do the big ones, including mom, dad, and family. So just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Reverend Jim. So you're saying that forgiveness is a lot more than just us forgiving the issue. It's really going in and also working on the inner hurt that caused the forgiveness in the first place. So,
Yes.
so how do we handle the ones that we are having issues with really forgiving?
We handle them by handling ourselves. And what I mean by that is, in essence, there's a lesson in A Course in Miracles, everything's a lesson that God would have me learn. And in essence, those family members that could not offer us the love in the ways that we needed it were catalysts for our growth and our healing. We are still holding them responsible for that, but they have been unwilling or unable to do it. So we must do it for ourselves. I have a phrase that I use when I realize that I have to focus on me, not focus on the outer situation. The phrase that I use is, everything I see begins and ends with me. Let me repeat that. Everything I see begins and ends with me. So I find that I too, from time to time, fall in the habit of looking to someone outside of me to make me feel better, or to confer upon me the love that I feel like I lost or need. And I have to go within. And one of the ways to go within, there are so many. One of the ways, I teach a class on homecoming based on John Bradshaw's book, Healing the Inner Child Within. So one of the things that I often do is I go back to that inner child. That inner child is still there waiting for us, because that inner child has felt abandoned and alone. That inner child has felt afraid. That inner child has felt weak and vulnerable. That inner child has felt victimized, hurt, and abused. And they're waiting for the sentient, loving, God-filled self that we have become to come back and rescue them. So with individual clients and in some classes, I do a thing where I go down into the well of healing. And in that well of healing, which is down 10 steps, so it's a bit of a hypnotic journey, we meet the child. And the child is bathed in healing light. And the child is given permission to express what it needs. That child is given love. And as we do this repeatedly, that child learns to trust us, and that child begins to feel more confident. That child begins to feel the love that it has missed or that had been withheld from it. That child begins to love and appreciate itself, and that child begins to heal. But getting to Shay's comment that this is the icky feelings keep coming, that is because healing comes in layers. Our consciousness is like an onion, and we have to peel it back layer by layer by layer. And each time we shine light on a layer that is in need of healing, it might expose yet another layer, and we think, oh, I thought I dealt with that. And the reason we do that is because we've been conditioned to believe that our lives are like a 30-minute sitcom or a 60-minute police drama, and everything is resolved in one sitting, when things are resolved as we work with them, layer after layer after layer. So when icky feelings come back, that is not a sign of failure. when icky feelings come back, that is a sign of progress, because that is a sign that you are going deeper and deeper and deeper into the issue that has echoed through your life, getting to the core. So when you heal it at the core, it is healed in a way that nothing can shake you from your confidence or your sense of peace. And that's one of the ways of working with the inner child. Now, another way of working with the inner child is, we often think about ho'oponoponoing other people. My friend Reverend Daniel Newsom and I, when we joke, we like to joke around with each other and pick at each other and all that sort of thing. And so we joke every once in a while. We'll say, "Well, I'm gonna ho'oponopono your behind," and he'll say, "Well, you need some ho'oponopono." And we joke about giving ho'oponopono to each other, but one of the things that we can do is apply ho'oponopono to ourselves. And recently, Spirit gave me some new insights in how to apply ho'oponopono to ourselves. And I wanted to share some of that with us now, for this is another way of healing the child within. Now, the 4 phrases, well, you tell us, Reverend Michael, what are the 4 phrases of ho'oponopono?
Well, the 4 phrases, as taught by Dr. Len Hu, ho'oponopono is an ancient Hawaiian ritual that was meant to bring people back into community, if someone did something against someone else, then what they did was they did this ceremony. However, what happened is with ho'oponopono is that it deals not only with what happened, but it deals with everything. And that if there was anything that we did on any level, that what either intentionally or unintentionally, is it, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. Can we go with one more question here?
Carlisa's?
Let's go up to Carlisa, and I think
Yes.
that you can use this to go into what you were about to say about ho'oponopono. Carlisa says, how does unforgiveness actually block the flow of money and material prosperity? Examples, please. I think it is difficult to track.
Okay, let's work with that. So you're in unforgiveness. You have a chip on your shoulder about the world. The world is against me. The world is a wicked, hostile place. The world is a place of lack. The world is a place where some have been victimized. The world is a place where people have been oppressed. You are in unforgiveness. This is your energy. This is your frequency. This is your belief. This is what you emit. And therefore, this is what you see and what you draw to you. So what would happen if you went within and you found a place where you felt love, where you felt the beneficent, loving energy and flow of the universe instead? Where you felt this beneficent flow flowing to you, through you, and flowing from you and attracting beneficence in your outer world. You would be in a state of forgiveness, which is synonymous with a state of loving kindness, a state of loving peace, a state of oneness with the beneficent, creative, loving force we know to be God. And that would be reflected in your outer world instead. So unforgiveness may invite lack. Forgiveness may invite bounty, a bounty of good. So that's one way that could apply. And how do we get into this state? Because remember, forgiveness is an inner state. Well, I love what you said, Reverend Michael, about ho'oponopono, because it was simply a way to get into alignment with love.
Yes.
For that alignment with love is what facilitates the flow of prosperity.
Absolutely.
So let's look at how we can apply it to ourselves, specifically to the parts of ourselves that have felt wounded like our inner child. So let's start with I'm sorry. Now, in human English, I'm sorry implies guilt. Guilt implies unworthiness. Guilt implies punishment and retribution for sin. So what if we were to reframe I'm sorry to a Spanish phrase called lo siento? And there are other languages where they don't even have a correlate for the English word I'm sorry. One of the Spanish phrases used is lo siento, meaning I feel for you, which is different than I'm sorry. I'm sorry implies I'm guilty, I need to be punished, there's something wrong with me, I am bad, I have sinned. Well, A Course in Miracles tells us there is no sin, it has no consequences. This whole concept of sin and atonement for sin is an error in thinking. So what if I'm sorry actually meant lo siento? I feel for you. I feel your pain. I have compassion for you. I have empathy for you. I have understanding for you. What if we said that to our inner child? I feel for you. Here you have been imprisoned in this dark corner of my consciousness for 30 years in pain, in fear, in doubt, and in shame. I feel for you. I have compassion for you. I understand what you went through. What if we were to, from our highest selves, because we're strong adults. We have a lot of spiritual mastery at our fingertips, right? We are in the flow. What if that highest self that we are now were to visit that child and tell that child, lo siento, I feel for you. I understand your pain. I embrace you. I have compassion for you. Let me understand you. Let me hear you. Let me hold you. Let me love you. What if that was what we said when we said, I'm sorry? And then, please forgive me. Now, when we say, please forgive me, just like I'm sorry, it implies guilt. What if instead we wanted that inner child to trust us? Please trust that I am here for you. Please accept my blessed assurance. Please understand that I will protect you. Please know that I will provide for you that which you need and that which you didn't have. What if please forgive me meant that instead? Please let me love you. Please let me embrace you. What we would be doing then is we would be taking and channeling all this divine love that we have become adept at working with, that we have become adept at feeling, that we have become adept at channeling, and we would channel it through our highest selves, down into that part of us lurking in the deep dark corners of our consciousness, our inner child that has been in pain. So what if the first two phrases of Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry and please forgive me, meant I feel for you. Please let me love you.
We're getting some really wonderful comments here, Reverend Jim. Don't want to cut you off, but you can go on here. I think this will give you a little more insight here. Shay says that everything I see begins with me. I'm loving my beautiful inner child. Come on, no 30-minute fix. So, Shay, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. There is none. But what unforgiveness does is it literally, and this brings up Carlisa said this. She says, but there's plenty of poor forgiving people. All right, so
let me work with that.
Okay, well then you can go ahead and say something, and then I can say something. Go ahead.
Okay. The question is, have they forgiven the way we understand forgiveness now? Or have they forgiven in that oh, look at me, I'm such a martyr for I forgave you for victimizing me, which really means I'm still a victim. That's the question. That's how I would wonder about that.
And I think that yes, and I agree with that. I think that the other part of that, and this goes again into prosperity, is that when we do the clearing, is that then that there has to be something that takes the place. So again, that what usually is taught is that we do affirmations to fill that void. I'm going to suggest something else. I'm going to suggest that we align ourselves with the God thought about us rather than trying to create something, but we are in alignment with our true parent, the father, mother,
Mm-hmm.
that we align ourselves with that thought and know that from that thought that we are prosperous and that again all that the father mother has is ours. Yes, I agree, Carly. So there's plenty of that. And that again, if we don't do the inner, and same thing with tithing too. If we, you can go ahead, the whole emphasis on just giving.
Mm-hmm.
Giving is just one part of it. It gets the
It's a
actual physical
flow.
flow going.
It's a flow.
Right. So it gets the actual physical flow going. However, if you still have money wounds, again, that are around, mom did this, dad did this, my lover did this. What happens again, that does block your flow. Yes, tithing helps. It helps unblock the flow, but that's not the only thing that when it's an incomplete prosperity teaching if you go ahead and you don't put in the other inner aspects like what Reverend Jim's saying.
Absolutely. Prosperity is an inside job. Inner prosperity is what creates outer prosperity. And so we can do all these things in the outer world, like forgive this one, forgive that one, forgive this one, using forgiveness as a verb, which is misusing it. Or we can go within and get into a state of forgiveness. Now, to get to the other two aspects of Ho'oponopono and how we can apply them to our inner selves, especially our inner child, where many of the wounds still exist. Thank you. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you, I appreciate you. Thank you, I see you. Thank you, I embrace you. Thank you for being so brave as to stick this out. Thank you, I love you. And in essence, what we're doing is exactly what Reverend Michael said, which is we are flowing the divine love through us, to that wounded place within us, and putting ourselves in an inner state of forgiveness. And this is the inner state that says yes. This is the inner state that says more. This is the inner state that says, I allow it to be easy. This is the inner state that says, I allow myself to be blessed. This is the inner state that says, the God within me, which is at one with God the Mother, God the Father, facilitates this flow of all my good because God's will for me is perfect happiness, which is A Course in Miracles, lessons 100 to 103.
Our Isabella B., hello there. She says, in what sense are they poor? Getting back to the question, there have been studies showing that some of the poorest materially are the happiest. Reverend Jim Webb.
Amen. Let's work with this. Let's look at poverty and riches in a slightly different context. Let's look at this not in terms of material stuff, but in terms of the quality of our lives. In my book, The Soul of Prosperity, one of the things I talk about is how someone can be joyfully happy on a $20,000 income, and someone else can be absolutely miserable on a 7-figure income, especially if they've got an 8-figure debt. And so let's look at poor that way. And what I mean by that, Michael, if you put up the question again, um, poverty has little to do with. Let me rephrase that, because poverty obviously has something to do with uh, the material resources or the lack of material resources. But that's not the only type of poverty. There is spiritual poverty as well. So the question is not material poverty or material riches. The question is internal riches or internal poverty. For if you have internal poverty, you may be the richest person in the world, but you may be absolutely miserable. Does anybody know of any world leader who may have been wealthy from the start, but appears to be so miserable? I don't know. I'm not naming any names because we're not a political show. Amen. But given that, do you think that person has spiritual wealth or spiritual poverty? Just a question, just asking, just wondering. So you see what I'm getting at here?
Carlisa wanted to tack on a little more information from what she said. She said,
Mm-hmm.
when I say poor, I mean people say that they don't have enough money to pay for shelter or food. Lots of spiritual communities among them. She also had another follow up with that. If I am worried about eviction or the repossession of my car, and that's the whole idea of applying the principles of prosperity to meet our everyday needs so that we know that our inner source is our supply. It's not,
Yes.
it's, yes, it comes from other different channels, but our inner source is our supply. So if we go into our inner source and we know that we have the money, and we know that somehow or another that the money is provided, and then we act on any good thoughts that come into our consciousness, then those are taken care of. But again, what Jim was saying this evening is it's all an inner job. Shay has another comment. She says, I work with the two wings of Buddhism, compassion and mindfulness, and do exactly what you're talking about when I'm sleepless. Totally works. And she says, I forget about the onion. Shay, you and I both. Gosh, how long have I been working on myself? Gosh, like 30 years or so. But the thing is that it's when you're on the path, that as long as you stay on the path and put one foot in front of the other, that what happens is that down the road, a little piece, that you'll find, oh my goodness, I feel so much better. I've had people that said to me in the past, well, like 20 years ago, well, you're so angry. And it's like people now, someone brings that up and they say, people who've been around me lately says, well, I don't feel that. And I don't feel that either. It's because, again, that I am emitting another frequency here.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I want to get back to Carlisa just for a moment, and I want to work with this just a little more. And I don't want to, sometimes it's very easy for, quote, gurus to blame the victim. And that's not what I want to get into here. But I know that a lot of spiritual people have an unconscious idea embedded in their consciousness that may betray their prosperity. The unconscious idea that some spiritual people have embedded in their consciousness is the equation of poverty with nobility and holiness. I call it the martyr syndrome in my book, The Soul of Prosperity, where we have erroneously believed that we are sinful and that we must work our way back to God's good grace. And one of the ways we work our way back to God's good grace is by martyring ourselves, putting ourselves through the ringer, denying our good. And once again, this unconsciously creates this false nobility because we equate suffering and martyrdom with nobility. Now, a lot of spiritual people may not be conscious of the idea that these two things have been deeply embedded in the spiritual mindset. So deep that we may not even perceive that they exist. But they must exist, for they show up in our outer world. And that's why A Course in Miracles lessons 100 through 103, which I cite like every other word, are so important. God's will for me is perfect happiness. I agree with God's will for me. And what this begins to do is it dispels the idea that God wants us to martyr ourselves in order to be worthy of God's loving grace. And then I often go back to lessons 91 through 93, which kind of demolishes this whole concept of sin and redemption, because these are attached. There is no sin, it has no consequences, is what these lessons say. These lessons tell us, okay, this whole walk on the earth that you've been doing has been based on this idea you are sinful and you've got to work your way back to God. But what if there was no sin? And what if there were no consequences? What if you just made mistakes that can be corrected by grace? You can call on grace in an instant. That grace can correct the errors in your thinking that have created an error in your frequency, that has created something, that has created you attracting something that you don't desire. And it's that simple. And interestingly enough, Ho'oponopono actually means correction. When we do Ho'oponopono, that's applying spiritual energy to correct a frequency that has been in error. So the point of all of this is, yes, there are a lot of spiritual people who may unconsciously equate poverty and martyrdom with holiness and nobility. And that could be an error that is awaiting correction.
Oh, absolutely. We only have 10 minutes left.
Oh, no, that can't be. How can that be? What happens, Reverend Michael? How does the time fly?
Well, you and I get to talking, and then everyone else then goes ahead and chimes in. So with this, the only one that you did not really cover is I love you. What spiritual significance does that have, especially when we are working with the inner self?
Okay, it's actually quite simple. And let's go back to Shay's first question about working with her parents. What did she need? Her inner child needed love that her parents were unable or unwilling or unequipped to offer her in the way that she needed it. So what does I love you do? It fills in the blank. It fills in the hole. It brings in from the source the love that she expected from the conduit. Now, I said two very important operative phrases there. You have the source, and you have an infinite number of conduits. You see, the parents were one conduit for what we expected. One conduit for what we expected of God's love. And quite often, since the parents were the source of life, and they were the ones primarily responsible for our lives and our protection, especially in our infancy, we believed them to be the only conduit for God's love. And when they were unable, unwilling, or unequipped to be the conduits we needed to be, we didn't believe that it was available, that love was available. So what we're doing now is we're going to the source, regardless of conduits. And we're getting directly from the source that which is needed. And we are the conduits focusing that love on the parts of us that have needed love. So I love you is simply taking all of that energy of correction that we have generated through this Ho'oponopono process and directing it to the place where love is needed, where correction is needed. And that's the significance of I love you. It's more, I align and fill this place within. I align with love and fill this place within with the love that it has yearned to experience for decades.
So, Reverend Jim, what are you doing these days? How are you occupying the week?
I am. Well, I'm working on a new surprise book. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later. But in the meantime, I've got two classes going on. They're sold out, but I am making the recordings of the classes available to anyone who wants them. The Monday class is called Ask Spirit Anything. And you can get the recordings of these classes where people just like you on the spiritual path are asking their questions of spirit on any and every topic. And their answers are your answers because their questions are your questions. And I'm doing on Thursday night Speaking with Spirit. It's a participatory series of exercises in spiritual growth and development so that we can create a stronger bond with Spirit, trust the guidance we get from Spirit, and live with the blessed assurance of Spirit. You can get these recordings as well. So it's 8 weeks of recordings, 16 recordings in total for only $100. And it's almost like being there because you get the answers, you get the questions, you get the energy, and you do the exercises as I guide people to do them. So that's what I'm working on these days. And interestingly enough, my book, The Soul of Prosperity, and my other books are available on Amazon.com. And The Soul of Prosperity is on sale right now. So now is a good time for you to stock up on it so you can give the gift of prosperity to those who you love, either for their birthdays or for the holidays.
Jim, you're giving away the store again. How many times have you and I have had this discussion? I mean, you just give and give and give, and then you receive back. So
yes.
Yes. That's how it goes.
That's how it works. Exactly.
That's how it works.
Exactly. Well, I have to give something to you.
Reverend okay. Yes.
I have to give you my undying thanks and gratitude for not taking me to the Screen Actors Guild, for misusing you above and beyond the prerequisites of your contract.
Right. No. Well, now just to let you know, now the contract with the Screen Actors Guild. There's the actors,
mm-hmm.
and then it's called ARFTRA. So that's the broadcasters are under a separate contract.
Okay. So I won't get into trouble with your union.
No, you won't hear from the union steward. But yeah, anyhow.
Thank you so much, Reverend.
You're welcome. Let's see who else is checking in here real quick. Deanna says, thank you for the in-depth clarification. Great session. Thank you. Mignon says, God's will for me is perfect happiness. If it works for God, it works for me. And Carlisa, I agree with you. Something gets really lost in the translation. And so that's the reason why, again, letting your inner guidance reveal to you the right teachers, the right books, the people, the right communities, the right spiritual leaders to sit under. Because yes, a lot of this gets lost in the translation. And so this is all about, again, our aligning ourselves with spirit so that we literally create heaven on earth. That's the goal. So Yeah. So thank you, boy. We have such great conversations. We have church on Sunday evening. Amen.
Yes, we do. Amen. So I want to thank you, Reverend Michael, for supporting us today. And God bless you. And we'll be back next Sunday night at 8 p.m. here on the New Thought Media Network.